All right, our next caller is 818. Your name and where you're calling from?
Hey, Andrew. This is Dan from L.A.
Hi, Dan from L.A. How you doing today?
Good, good. I was wondering about the iPage coming out from the former OPPT through Project 13. What do you know about that?
Say that again. Your voice is a little soft. Talk right into your phone.
Okay. The iPage from the former OPPT, it's going to be coming through Project 13. They're saying it's like
I don't pay attention to other people's work like that. They have their own purpose. Did you have questions for a psychic reading? I don't pay attention to their work. In fact,
okay.
I rarely pay attention to anyone else's work. And there are multiple number of reasons for that. You know, everyone has a soul family. Everyone has a soul family, and my purpose here is to bring this layer of information about free will. The OPP is about free will, which that makes them a very good organization. But like any organization in the United States, you have to deal with the fact that everybody has negative incarnation patterns, and that naturally is the habitat that's created as part of the support unit. And for the support unit to be unified, there needs to be leadership that keeps people in line on the lower level. And this is not about the OPP itself. They're a great group of people, and they do the Collective Imagination Show. And a great group of guys. The people that manage their comment pages, the people that are commenters, they need to understand that you need to take emotion out of commenting. That's what I'm referring to. And that's ultimately what any organization here in this world is going to be suffering from now. And that's why reasserting your free will and understanding, removing as much of the emotional coloring as you can, we can get people together to break into the world. It would be outstanding if the OPP and some other people could join together and make multiple unity forces, you know, of OPP and some of the Native and Indian movements throughout Canada. You know, they came forward.
Yeah. Well, do you know that if I'm with someone special right now?
Well, what I need you to do is tell me about your first 10 minutes of the day and be as specific as possible when you first woke up, and I can tune into your records. I need you to do that about 45, 50 seconds out loud.
Okay. I got up. I went to the bathroom. I came back to bed, and I started looking up articles. I did dream last night. I kind of remembered a little bit. I went into like this old shabby like FedEx kind of thing.
I've tuned into your energies, and this is gonna come with a little bit of shock to you. But right now you have a trickster spirit in your life, and this trickster spirit you invited into your life exactly 2 years ago. What were you doing 2 years ago? This time 2 years ago, end of May 2 years ago.
Let's see, because I'm in LA for acting, and I was waiting tables. But I've actually got away from that. I quit the job. I stopped going out on auditions, and I've been kind of just going into myself. And
were you partying?
What's that?
Were you partying?
I was partying a lot, and I've cut that down tremendously.
That's where the trickster spirits come. And for you right now, the trickster spirit is addicting you to article information. And what it is you need to do is you need to be out in the sun and out in nature and understand that there's a different layer of spiritual communication that's coming to you through the cycle and movement of what's going on in your astrological chart. And as I'm looking at you, you're being lined up like a similar caller to change your spiritual armor. And they're trying to lock a pattern right now. And the reason you were partying so much was to totally limit your energy when you literally came into the change phase. Just like a soft-shelled crab, you are just about to expel your own armor. You're in a different position. The armor that you have on now is going to fall off, literally. And then you're going to have a very soft, energetic layer, and that's going to build over a period of about 45, 50 days. And it's going to be vitally important for you that you go through the re-energizing phase. You get out in nature. You get out in water. You get out and communicate with the earth. You talk to the fire. And above all else, you find things that truly nourish your stomach. your stomach is way out of line. You don't have the proper microorganisms in them. There's a severe layer of toxic black mucus on your lower colon. You've been finding it difficult to go to the bathroom?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I mean, I'm really sensing this hardcore. It's as if when you were...
I've been, regular. I'd wake up every day and usually around 11:30.
You can be regular, but you're anything that's got processed food in it, you're just breaking down easy stuff. That's all that's coming out. You're in a situation you need to purge your colon, and you're only gonna, once you purge it, you're gonna rapidly recognize how much energy is being taken from your intestines to try to over process the food that's in your gut. What I'm also sensing is when you were waiting tables, there was a tremendous amount of psychic information coming from those people because you were in a very introspective mode. Were you deep in your head, when you make sure you were focused dealing with those people, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That means you were in their energy
sometimes
field.
know what they already want before they even ask.
That means you were in their energy field, absorbed their junk.
Okay.
In anything that is, this is classic for people that are servers. They have a psychic side of them they don't know and only represents when they're at work and they find themselves predicting what people want. That means you are in the energy field of that person and you are taking their junk. And when you are in that situation where you're around food all the time, you begin to store that junk information in your intestines simply because you have nowhere else left to store it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you would be doing is a fast or a purging, a colonic, a home enema, so that you can clear out your lower colon to begin to understand that you're holding on to a tremendous amount of negative psychic information from other people that you took. And now are impressing it into food as a storage unit, and it's stuck in your intestines, unable to digest. And when your dreaming body goes to wake up, it literally has to go through the intestinal wall because that's where your dreaming body is stored, in between your sacral chakra and your root chakra. What happens when your dreaming body opens up? There's a little golden egg that goes from your belly button to below to around in your pubic area, and these little tentacles come out. And those tentacles have to filter through all that negative psychic data that's stuck in your mucus layer of the colon. That's what literally limits your dream world. And that is another classic example of the system creating spiritual contract to limit you from being the psychic that you are. You went into that job at that time because they knew that you were awakening and they needed to make sure you were stuck in a non-resolution phase.
Okay. But now that I'm all separated from everything, because I've been kind of just meditating and just being very spiritual.
That's good to be a self. It's good to be a self cheerleader, but you need to act now. You quite literally need to act. You need to understand that you need to start having drumming or rattling or dancing or something that causes physical action.
Okay, I do have some crystal bowls that I play with my soulmate. Am I with my soulmate right now?
Well, I'll get into that in a second. You need to be out in nature. You can't be stuck inside your house anymore.
Okay.
All right, you're at this point where literally the energies in your home are what's going to limit you from healing. And when you go out and get new energies, you can do a healing on your home so you can heal more at home. All of that negative energy you took, mate had to be able to take some of that energy too, because that's what people in love do. They help balance that energy out. But you also have your son, you have to take that energy back from him so he can fully heal. You got what I'm saying? It's real purification, purging process for you.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. Am I with my soulmate right now?
Well, what do you think a soulmate is?
Well, it's somebody that you're supposed to be with. Somebody, I've heard from a couple of sources that she's my twin flame.
Okay. Well, only you know. If you rely on the information from others all the time, you'll never know. And I'm going to tell you this right now. she is soul family. There's a very big difference between what soul family and soul mate is. Soul mate is someone that you're supposed to have a psychic offspring child where you are both in psychic good health so that child could come out psychic. That's what soul mates are meant for. If you are meant to soul mate this lifetime, you'll begin a healing process and open up to your spirituality so you're a healed healer, and then you'll find your soul mate. But at the same time, the person that you're with wants to go through the same process. So if you were to use synchronicity and both begin to spiritually expressive, that could come. But right now, there's no soulmate in your future because you haven't empowered yourself to finish this new armor phase. You're about to shed your armor and go through a phase where you're making brand new spiritual armor, and you must be fully expressive inside it, or it will limit your psychic talents.
I'm sorry?
Did you hear anything that I said?
You just kind of broke up right there.
All right, what you're going to need to be doing is expressing yourself to understand that you need to be on the path of healing, the path on the healer. You need to be acting. You do not want these negative spiritual contracts to interact. You're at this stage, you have to understand soulmates come together to have a psychic offspring. And you're not in the healing phase that you've created your new proper armor. So there is no soulmate in your life right now until you become the healer and you become to understand the type of armor you're creating in this next life phase.
So you're saying I have to heal myself first before I have that type of relationship with a soulmate or a twin flame?
A soulmate is a person you have a psychic offspring with, and you're not in the proper energy stage to have a psychic offspring. So the answer is no. It's the definition that you have to begin to understand of what soul family and soulmate is. The person you're with is soul family. That means you have the opportunity to become soulmates if you are both in a healed state.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because like I also had like an incident that happened like in 1992, where I kind of freaked out. Do you have any kind of pick on that was? In 92, I kind of like freaked out, and I don't really quite know what happened. I ended up going to rehab, but I don't know if it was drug related or not. Can you see what actually happened at that instant?
When you got out of rehab, what's the first memory you can remember right now, the day you got out?
Just going to junior college, I guess, and starting
the day
baseball.
The day you actually left the rehab clinic, what did you do? What's the first thing you did when you walked out the door?
I can't even remember.
Try. I need to tune in on that energies because there's redacted information there. This is, again, classic of negative spiritual contracts that have been using and abusing you with fine print to keep you in situations where you wouldn't grow. And this is redacted on you. Like there's a thick layer of black information, and as I'm tuning into it, it's because you were having a revelation from a past life experience, and a number of your contracts that network over each other blocked out you from having a past life memory, a past life re-experience. And if it had aligned to your astrological events, then you would have had a great awakening.
Yeah, I think that's what it was too, because I don't think it was drug induced. I think it was kind of like an opening that I kind of freaked out upon, and I put it away, didn't know what it was, and I just figured it was like drug induced. I guess leaving there, I felt relieved, and that I was going to help people, and that I would never, touch drinking or drugs again. Yeah, I guess just relief.
But you went back to it.
I did go back to it, yeah.
Well, why did you go back to it? Is there any hindsight that tells you?
No, I guess just hanging around people and just partying and And I just kind of got, more and more into it.
So what turned you on in 2000, this year 2000 to be paying attention to the different OPP? What changed your life? What brought you into the truth movement?
I guess I just wanted to, cleanse myself again. And I've been just on the past couple of years on a spiritual growth, learning about, meditation. Like I never meditated before. And I've been meditating more and more and just getting more spiritually awakened and learning everything how everyone's attacking you from every angle. So I'm trying to get free from that however possible. And then I came across OPPT, and then they've been talking about this movement and how they're going to have an abundance package. And then it's going to move into, the UFO sightings and landings and just the ascension process. So just everything is just,
you got drawn up into 2012. Everyone did. That's what 2012 was about. Was to occupy you so you wouldn't be going into yourself. But there are many positive sources out there that allowed you to go in yourself. Finding the OPP opened you up to regular meditation, just like you just said. So many of these organizations have a very positive effect on the waking up process. And here you're at going through the next phase. You survived 2012. Now it's a new spiritual armor that you're creating so that the rest of 2013 is not going to be as harsh as 2012 was. You're literally creating spiritual armor the next 45 days.
Okay.
That makes you immune to the psychic attacks of others.
Yeah, because I can't even talk to my family about it because I'm the youngest of 5 children from a strict Catholic family in the Midwest, and they don't believe anything I'm saying about anything, and they believe in 9/11.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them, honestly. Don't tell them. Don't share anything with them. You need to be around like-minded people.
I've gotten to that point, I can't.
Then no longer invest in them and understand that that's another example of a spiritual contract that doesn't allow you to be in full contact with your soul family. They're asleep. You can't blame them for being asleep. But at the same time, you don't have to receive their energy that's negative contracts. This is where you can use an external system of prayers that says, I love you, family, but I cannot be bombarded by this fine print and this contract anymore. I'm now eliminating all fine print contract that has to do with the truth movement. And therefore that energy will not come to you anymore. You'll have to do it individual for each person, and you'll have to do it out loud quite a few times. And understand the more you do it during the next 45 years, you will re-armor yourself against that energies. And if you word it so it's karmically proper, that no energies are exchanged other than the elimination of the contract, you will find yourself tremendously empowered. Because it still allows for the energy of love to go through, but not the emotional attachment of the matrix programming that's part of the contract. The matrix program is the habitat and the habit of people putting you down when you talk about it because their belief system is different than yours. This is a free planet, and for you to reclaim your free will starts with you identifying how these intricate family contracts create conversation that's ultimately negative.
This trickster spirit that you said, is there any way to get rid of this? Is that through the colon cleanses and all that as well?
That's going to be you armoring yourself to it because the trickster spirit's going to lead you back into the party scene. That's its purpose.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely out of the party scene.
Well, it doesn't mean that 6 months from now or 3 months from now or 9 months from now, somebody's going to come by and make a really good offer, and you may just be in that low energy state and say yes. And know that trickster spirit is literally creating that synchronicity and that doorway for which you to project energy into a lower vibrational habit pattern. It's going to use synchronicity against you.
Okay,
and you be aware of it, and when it comes, you go, aha, I see you. No, thank you. And then you eliminate your contract with that trickster from ever returning.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. I know you got a lot of calls there.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
So 600 million people in 30 years. That also included, cows, chickens, food. The mass supply, all of that. To be able to make it. So they needed the Cold War to do that.
Cold War cover, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of volume of that sort of talent being removed from society, and what was the potential of the society with that in it, It's all like, well, let's pull the reins of the industrial era, How are we gonna hold it back? Well, let's just take a whole group of people and employ them in what we want them to.
The brain drain. Well, as soon as those people became off-worlders, their spiritual contracts changed. They became third density roaming entities. And you've heard me say galactic free roaming entities or things like that. These are just the local free roaming entities. So their physics has now changed and scaled because they're not in the same bubble of Earth in the disunity physics they're using.
Yeah.
Now, some of them were portaled there under concepts there is an emergency on Mars and we have the special technology and we need immediate people there to build this, and this. And then they got there and they built for 5 years and then the next group came and they never got to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's the compartmentalization, mate. That's all it is. Telling people just enough to get them to what they want to do, and then, it's actually a conditional thing.
Right. And if they can keep some semblance of order at all, all they do is keep sending more and more and more and more and more and more people.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is a bit like, we've mentioned The Expanse, the new TV show, where it's like...
I enjoyed that one.
Because it's like set in a couple hundred years' time with Mars, Earth, and the asteroid belt, where there's like water is the most precious thing in the solar system.
Yeah.
And it's all the cultural issues with that. Because the hierarchical order, like Earth sees itself as number one. Mars is like, they appreciate everything on the planet because people on Earth, like, just, it's overpopulated and they've destroyed the beauty of it. And
I beg to differ. It's not overpopulated. It's underpopulated.
In that series.
No. In I'm saying in the way it is now, the Earth can hold a lot more life.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that, like,
it's just dirty laundry water right now.
Yeah.
As soon as the water back on the planet that they took away, things get good really fast.
Mm. Yeah. But yeah, that series is like, it's like generations on from what you're saying.
Yep.
And
there was another series, I forgot what it was, but it was what we were just talking about, the brain drain. and they told everyone it was that they boarded a ship in the 60s. I have to look into my... with some dumb name. Ascension. Ascension.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They that was only a few episodes, and then they...
Yeah.
Because, yeah, they were they doing an experiment, and they were saying they were going off-world?
Yeah.
And it was all like a Truman Show sort of thing. Yeah.
I didn't get that far into it, but it was appearing that way,
Yeah.
I think. And they were trying to lead it a bunch of different ways and make you guess what it was going to turn out to be.
But yeah, the body, the brain drain, that's quite staggering, that figure.
Now,
It's like, this is linked up to all the universities and the education system to identify talent.
right, that's why they needed mass colleges.
Because there was that movie, like The Recruit, with...
Great movie. I love that. Colin Farrell. That was just one of the really kicked him off.
Al Pacino, and they developed the tech that takes over the TV screens, and then it's like, hang on, we've got a live one here, come in this, and it was like all about the trap, like recruitment.
Yep. And what the other one, Spy Game with what's his name?
Yeah, I love that.
Pitt. Yeah, I like that one too.
And the older guy, what's his name? In the Porsche.
Oh
man.
Redford. Yeah.
I see the face,
Robert Redford.
Operation Dinner Out.
Yeah, I love that. I remember that, Dinner Out.
And he's on the helicopter getting out of the prison, and he finds out the name of the
yeah. What was the name of the...
What's the name of the operation? Operation Dinner Out.
That's cool.
Well, I love the Robert Redford character in that. He's just so many steps ahead of everyone else.
I liked him in the movie Sneakers. Yeah. And they really weren't able to recreate a movie like that afterwards. Because it started a new look at that genre.
Yeah. I think that was the very first time I ever heard of the NSA.
Yeah, because they had just been announced in the world at that time.
Yeah.
So in Sicario, after watching that again, I went and watched. It was The Infiltrator.
You talking recent?
Yeah, recent. Yeah, a movie that just came out.
Yeah.
And it was all about the Pablo Escobar era and all of the cash that was moving in and out of these banks.
Yeah.
And that's what unveiled, the Iran-Contra scandal.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I've actually had a real fascination about that era.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. What
am I triggering Galactic Boy?
Yes, because I have had my own fascination with that era.
Oh,
because
right. Yeah.
I had shit out of bases, like myself and dozens of other kids would just show up in an energy form and wreak havoc to computers, type shit out on screen, set stuff on fire. Yeah, scare people.
Yeah.
It's like a whole future attack.
Beg your pardon?
It was like a whole future attack. Like, I'd have straight up dreams about that, every night.
Wow.
Thousands of kids worldwide. One time's in Japan, one's here, one off world. You just pow, pow, just taking systems out. Whenever they were trying to do something that was nasty.
Because, I mean, to me, like, I've mentioned a guy, Daniel Hopsicker, and he's like, he got triggered to explore the drug thing and how, you know, the relationship between drugs and arms sales is hand in hand. But he's like in America, and it's like the whole concept of, you know, mastering that genre in the world is just not even computed by Americans. It's all these outsiders, you know. But you look at history, like he talks about, you know, the idea that drug barons, whatever, are like these bare-chested bandolier wearing guys. They're all the guys with university buildings in Harvard, you know, the family lineage, you know, the whole
the lineage.
yeah. I mean, that's where I really got into the drug thing with the money, because it's like hand in hand. It was like in Hong Kong and stuff. I mean, that's why I was fascinated with Kathy and that, because like, you know, I'm here in Adelaide and it's like very much a British bastion, and I remember like the whole perception that China getting back Hong Kong is such a negative thing. You know, it was planted in our awareness that how dare China take back a part of the British Empire, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's like 50 years late, and the reason the British got Hong Kong is that they destroyed by opium the whole, you know, reality. And it's like, you know, how dare we, you know, more than how dare they. But yeah, around Contra was just like, Daniel Hopsicker talks about, he's got this NSA associate that while he was in all that, he didn't agree with it, but it's like you have to go along with it. And it's like, he talks about how drugs became the tail that wags the dog in that whole reality. And
so
the money, I mean, the money is obviously going to these off-world stuff, you know, that's my attitude, so...
Think about the relevance of why drugs and a brain drain would be going on at the same time. Try to think of some correlations. And think multidimensionally here.
Well, it's to fund these people. Like, give them lifestyle. Harvest energy. And
powering. Sacred geometry systems.
Yeah, like it's a bit like how you said, you know, there's these areas of energy reserve around the world that are harvested, and obviously done under, you know, underground sort of tech and, you know, out of phase sort of things that require a lot of energy.
Well, that 60s, 70s, and 80s would have marked the end of the Wizards era and the beginning of the tech era. Wizards would still exist, but not in the mass scales like they had done in the previous 300 years.
Yeah, so this is that, you know, that...
They had reduced them because the sacred geometry system used to be all the... Wherever there was a post office, there was a black pole that was directly connected to the Pope that made all the religious symbols connect to each other. That's how he got dominion over the whole world, through the post system.
Yeah.
So that's why the British Opium Wars were so important, because they needed to put posts all throughout China.
Stamp their mark on the reality, yeah.
And use the stamp that was on the heroin or whatever, the opium or whatever it was at that time, to put the spiritual mark on the person too.
Yeah.
Your own.
Sacred geometry, like
person.
branding.
Yep. And
metaphysical level, absolutely.
Yep. So the end of...
Like, my attitude is like all these symbols say, like the military and the government agencies, like whether it be police or whatever, they all have symbols on them, so they're a stamp in the energy field by the unaware aspects that most people are set up for failure, which makes them conducive for being an instrument of that mechanism, of that.
Exactly, you smart man.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, because
There's another little...
They can be Agent Smith at any time.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
And energy can come in and be invited as an overlay that takes over them, and they're not aware because they're not trained in metaphysical sort of psychic defense. You know?
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that, because stuff has happened around me, and I talk about my peripheries, like a metaphor for all these peripheries are like, whether it be incarnation war or this stuff, it's like, I use the analogy of, I mentioned it to you before, the Aliens movie, where they get the crap beaten out of them for the first go, the Marines, and then they regroup trying to get the spaceship down at this other base, and they defend it, and they forget about the air vents, and it's like, that's like multi-dimensional peripheries, because in their 3D awareness they think we've got the doors, we've got all the gates and stuff, but the aliens are very smart and they come through the air vents, and it's like, what the crap is going on? And they realise how much they left a gap. So that's like a periphery I sort of contemplate. That movie offers it very visually, and you leave yourself wide open if you don't master all the peripheries.
So the wizard class in the late 1800s, after the Civil War, because the Civil War was a test of black magic at very, very high levels, the group that lost, they were eradicated. So what was left of them basically became the drug cartels in Mexico, in Brazil, etc. They went into the hills to hide. So the wizard class was allowed to get very old. World War I came and World War II came that thinned out a tremendous amount of the wizard class. By the 60s,
the middle management call that you sort of said, yeah.
So by the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were so old, the old sacred geometry system could no longer be maintained, and digital systems and telephones and all that took over the new digital magic. And they allowed those people to die off, or to become part of a new militarized system of magic.
Yeah. Well, I asked you, I mentioned about your event and what I perceived with the future potential of humanity from it. And you offered there was, I don't know if you said one layer there or a couple of layers in that exchange. Was there anything else that in that?
Oh yeah, there's a lot more. I was just allowing myself the freedom to speak a point of view that people really need to know. That's the layer to where Andre set up the context of, and ultimately what's wrong with our world and why we've repeated this 4 times in a paradox is because you have higher density beings who are zealots and martyrs. Literally, their whole species have become that, both good and bad. And somehow these group of martyr zealots, a small number of them, have figured out how to control large numbers of other species through war, through technology, through commodities, through outbreeding, through spiritual incarnation wars, so on and so forth, a variety of techniques. And they're based here.
Yes.
And yeah, they're based on other worlds too, but a huge core are based here because this is a massive commodity planet to them.
Mm.
So part of the passing of the galactic central plane is those that are under the zealot martyrship point of view will cease to be able to function in between the space of cells here. They'll actually have to take physical bodies and be expressed to the sun. And those that are on the surface who are supposed to have inner earth nurturing light will then move to the inner earth nurturing light. And then another group of beings who are in the astral world will take up in the surface world as well as the hollow world. And then other beings who are in what I call, how do I put this? Extinction. So like when a species goes into extinction, like dinosaurs or whatever else, there's a residual image of light that is stored by the planet that's also in the hollow earth spaces that will then reemerge in all the different bubbles of reality. Because extinction is coming under what was needed for linear time to resolve multidimensional time travel war. It needed to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on as linear time, and on 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 forever, until finally the string that was the hairball was so far behind it, we forgot about it. Because lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, we go through the infinite awareness, and then we go through the birth canal, and we forget, and all these off-world beings came here and said, this is how you remember. And they gave us bad memories.
Yeah. Polarized memories.
Right. Polarized, charged memories. Weaponized, even.
Yeah, with vested interests.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I've actually, it hasn't been made public, but I've actually told some species off, and Andrew's kicked the Zetas out and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I've had my share of having to tell them, this is the last straw.
Yeah.
Cross this line, we are going to go to a whole new area of sacred neutral response. And yes, there are things known as sacred neutral responses.
You like using the get up, stand up for your rights, but I like John Lennon's Instant Karma, mate.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't need to physically touch a person to exchange karma. Just words alone.
Yeah. Truth.
Yeah.
Truth.
Right. Truth. Stingingly cutting truth from the Akashic record until they have to put their fingers in the ears and run away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been involved with some stuff, and like one of the things I've had with you, I've extended your remedy and resolve, and I've had the amnesty thing, but to me, I forgot to mention with that is that you get amnesty after put your weapons down. That's the key. You don't get amnesty without responsibility, So
I like to use the term when people actually go through, they melt down their tools of war and craft them into tools of peace. Okay?
Yeah.
Once they learn how to use the tools of war for the methods of peace, amnesty is there for you.
The thing is,
That's not hard. It's not hard. Really, it isn't. It's heart space awareness, knowingness, and trust of yourself.
Yeah. Because what you've said many times and throughout the years that you've offered stuff is that a lot of the species that are doing the bad are actually trapped themselves.
That's right.
And
totally trapped. Run by a light dictatorship, not a dark dictatorship.
Yeah. So the things that I've sort of had experience in is that those beings are sort of trapped and they're in fear, and they maintain their position and attitude and polarity and stuff because they seem like, from their perspective, that they've got no out. And if you offer them an amnesty after they put their weapons down, then they actually choose resolution and actually contribute to the resolution. And the thing is, you've got to offer them the sacred space and the trust for that. I don't know. It's a tough decision from that perspective because you feel. I know a lot of those beings felt like they've done a lot of stuff that they don't deserve it. And my attitude is there's always opportunity if you're willing to explore it. So yeah.
So there's so many different layers within that 1 minute of what you just spoke. And one of the layers that I want to point out is a light dictatorship, a small elite form of light beings, positive beings, who are simultaneously doing negative with false light technology, are running a infrastructure that uses dark concepts as a means of forced evolution, and they use an archonic system, archon grid, to create the spiritual invasion, meaning those coming from this planet, and this planet have VIP inline tickets.
Mm.
And there are other beings that are waiting thousands of generations to be able to get in and have one lifetime, and then they get in and they realize the archonic grid has changed everything about spiritual contracts here. So for the longest time, the perception of the archonic grid was the only way you could get in, until some people figured out how to break it. And that was by having other off-world beings come here and die here, or have offspring here, so that they could make their own grid with the planet separate of the belief system of the common surface and subsurface people. Because you can come here to have a relationship with just this planet, separate of all of its life force.
Yeah, and you're creating the ancestor link. That's part of what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting, mate, because there's a lot of potential, and it sort of feels in one way it's a bit of a stalemate still, you know. But to me, it's like the key in that for me is actually just continue. Like, how can I raise my bar further? How can I be better and stuff like that? And I've sort of alluded to a few things, and I've been a part of stuff that's pretty amazing in its own respect, and that's sort of why I'm in the trenches with Andrew here, you know, because
we're not in the trenches.
Well, it's a metaphor. it's side by side. I actually had a pretty good metaphor.
We're in the suburbs. We've been graduated a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a first world nation on Earth.
This frequency can't operate in the trenches. And the third world countries and the first world countries can be equally as bad or equally as good. So that's just a humanity concept. But it's when people are fully disempowered in embracing rage and instant gratification, that's the trenches.
Yeah.
When people truly aren't doing an ounce a day to help themselves. Okay? When they are totally lost to the system runs their next 25 years or the next 5 lifetimes. You know, the 1970s and the 1980s, you know, in my point of view, the system was running, let's say, 60% of the people. And then the mistake of cocaine was added into a bigger scale here. And I say the mistake of cocaine because they knew it would addict people and it ultimately would have, you know, some really nasty effects. But there were many people that used cocaine in the 70s and then figured out how to quit before it caused major bodily damage that did have massive awakenings from it. Now, I do not endorse this in any way, shape, and form, because what was coming in the 70s is nowhere near equal what's coming to the 80s and the 90s and then now time.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, in our other conversations, we talked how cocaine and heroin are weaponized, magically weaponized, targeting, you know, chemicals.
Yeah.
Sicknesses. Yes. Yeah. With all the dark rituals and baby sacrifice behind it that you could possibly, the most negative shit you could think, when they put their stamp seal of approval on it, guess what? That's a multidimensional curse.
Yeah.
And that's what they believe.
Yeah. I guess, like, cocaine's an interesting thing because it comes from the
and that's who's doing that? Right, the British.
Yeah. Colombia.
East India Trading Company did heroin.
Yeah. I've read this really interesting book by Dean Henderson, and he talks about Yugoslavia and how drugs were used there to undermine the reality flood a market with cheap drugs and stuff, and totally undermine the culture and stuff like that.
It's called stealing a generation. It is a common tactic that kings and queens have used to take over other countries in which they knew they wanted to go in there, but they could not afford a war in any way, shape, or form, or that something within their own internal society would not allow a war, so they came up with other ways. Okay? And steal a generation is they understand the children, those that are entering the workforce, will be the ones that are targeted, and it'll be at a very low price, and then the father will see what it does to the child and go, man, I need this so I can do more work too. And then the next thing you know, they're hooked in stuff, and they can't stop after a year of doing it.
Yeah.
Or 6 months of doing it. They're done. They're cooked. Their whole life is gone.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, like, I know that the Dutch, from my awareness, the Dutch first used it in the Indonesia area to get access to that realm, and then the British sort of used that ploy over in China. Is that an accurate perception?
Yep.
Because I feel like I don't want to trigger you too much.
The French used other psychedelics.
But it's interesting that
Snuff, which is cocaine and heroin.
Yeah. Like the British obviously had a big impact, but I see that now, even you just say that, it's fascinating that, like, undermining the American continent with drugs wasn't done like China was done. It's fascinating. I just got that now.
Well, no, the drug of choice here was alcohol.
Okay.
Firewater. That's what took down the Native Americans. Okay. Now, there were scenarios in which hardcore drugs like heroin and cocaine were introduced here, but it was not to take the indigenous down. The indigenous had already fallen just to alcohol and guns. Okay, and sicknesses. And then it was to take down the next breed of people that it took over. Particularly the Irish, cocaine, the African Americans, cocaine and alcohol. Why? Because you could have a slave start work at age 9, not introduce them to cocaine till 12, and then you would get 12 years out of them before they drop down dead. And by then, that kid would be muscular enough to carry a 50-pound bag of grain or sugar and unload boats all day, every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all of your stuff laced with cocaine.
Yeah. So it was used as an instrument for...
That's it. And break down. Your back would break at 12 years.
Yeah.
Longer if you could, or you figured out how to escape.
Do you want to actually go into the coca leaf? The history behind that?
I can. I just want to finish the how drugs steal generations.
Sure.
So when a king or a queen or some attacking society wasn't able to cause a war, and they choose other more nefarious methods, they send in a crack team of dealers who have esoteric backgrounds that are connected to very high energy frequency ceremonies in which are performed over the drugs that they're going to introduce, massive rituals, and then they begin to introduce it as medicine.
Yeah.
So heroin wasn't necessarily recreationally used. It was used to stop pain. Limited forms of surgery, they would use heroin as the painkiller, or opium mixed with heroin. Just the nastiest combinations you could think as medicine.
Yeah.
And they would pay doctors or street salesmen to sell this stuff very cheap. and it would do the mystical effects, take the pain away and all that, but a year into it,
yeah,
sometimes 6 months into it, depending on how much you took. And then heroin wasn't intravenously taken, until really, needles were commonplace. How was heroin taken? Snorted or smoked.
yeah. Mm.
So they'd steal a whole generation. And then that generation would be indebted. And then, the mother and father would become indebted because everyone got addicted to it. And they'd take over from inside.
Yes.
Without a shot fired.
Yeah. It was a longer term plan rather than
Right.
Patriot program sort of war.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that at all. So it's important to know that.
Yeah, and obviously the populations had no awareness of this. It was going on amongst them because the information wasn't there and resources to appreciate it weren't there and stuff. So it was,
So remember the movie Don't Kill the Messenger?
Yeah.
So that's a great example of society suddenly figuring out that game because the CIA did introduce crack cocaine at a very cheap price into Los Angeles and all over the country. And they got caught.
Yeah.
They got caught.
Yeah.
It's never stopped. The Opium Wars. The cocaine wars. It's been going on for as long as it's been in existence.
Yes.
So what was before cocaine was coca, the coca plant.
Yes.
And now that naturally grows throughout the Andes and South America, and it's used as a medicine.
Yes.
But when they have their dried leaves, which is a very sacred medicine to them because it connects them to the frequencies.
Yes.
It's like having a strong cup of coffee. Okay? But it doesn't have the negative side effects of coffee.
But it also helps them with the altitude. Is that something else as well?
Altitude sickness. It allows them to breathe deeper, to use more of their core muscles, tone body differently. So your body naturally can only absorb so much amount of XX or X substance. When one is snorting super refined cocaine, they are bypassing the bodies to reject too much of XX or X. When you're using coca in its leaf form, it's just like having tea or consuming food. Your body will only accept what it can to reach its homeostasis. So that's the big difference. Bypassing the homeostasis from a super ultra dense refined subject that you're sticking in your nose versus dried leaves off of the plant that are put into a tea.
Yeah.
Or leaves that are chewed on like a chewing tobacco.
Yeah, I have been aware of it being a like an ancestral sort of aware medicine of the indigenous of the region. Yeah.
Yep.
So when did the idea of actually refining it come about?
So it would have been the Brazilians. Let me look. I think 1670s, 1680s. But there were other versions of it before that. I think it was really when the Portuguese and the Spanish were battling for Brazil. Let me look. $1596. Where it went from a chewing mixture of tobacco and coca leaves into refined by the Portuguese. A Portuguese priest.
Well, it's quite a long time ago.
Yeah. So the isolation of the cocaine alkaloid was not achieved to 1855. Various researchers had attempted to isolate cocaine, but no one had been able to successful for 2 reasons. The knowledge of chemistry required was insufficient at the time, and the contemporary conditions of sea shipping from South America could degrade the cocaine in the plant samples available to European chemists. There you go. Yep. And then in 1879, it was Germans made it for medicalization. They called it for like tooth drops, pain killing. And then by 1859, doctors around the world were recommending it. So that's how much it's been bastardized.
I also know, like, these days there's prescription drops that have cocaine in them for your eyes. I remember that, a mate telling me. He was a pharmacist.
I don't know about that.
No?
I've never heard of cocaine drops in the eyes. I've heard about LSD drops in the eyes, what they would do in the 60s and the 70s, that they'd introduce it to a society in eye drops at a very light amount.
Well, can I talk to you about Coca-Cola?
Yeah, it had cocaine into it, until it was made to be taken out. I think it was in 1920 something like that.
Because to this day, I know there's a pharmaceutical company called Stefan Pharmaceutical out near Chicago that actually Coca-Cola get their coca leaves, and this pharmaceutical company extracts the actual active ingredients from cocaine, and the actual drink Coca-Cola has the remainder of the non-activated cocaine in it. That it's not vanilla, it's cocaine, or it's coca leaves.
Right. So I'm going to look up when did cocaine come out of Coca-Cola. I think it was in the 30s, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, like, talking patents and stuff like that, just the sheer success of that drink, you know, it's a mystery, right? You know what I mean? To have something succeed to the level it does, it's phenomenal, you know.
So, Coca-Cola, what do you think it was used for? A substitute to alcohol that could keep you working.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're talking the slaves and the cocaine-laced stuff. Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
There are hundreds of drinks that had cocaine in them. Everyone had their own local version.
I get what you mean, like local distiller or brewery had their own flavor of beer and stuff. You're talking a drink that has cocaine in it was pretty common, or not common, but it was a reality potential to explore.
You could get it by the ton, no problem, if you wanted large batches.
Okay. So interesting. I don't want to link up like the origins of cocaine to the slavery in the southern US, you know, but what you're sort of saying is it was a tool of a similar sort of theme was offered to the slaves to make them work.
To the slaves, that was their alternative: drink alcohol, be drunk all the time, and get whooped and beat up, or take the cocaine. After a while, the slaves figured it out. So giving drugs to slaves is thousands of years old. Yeah, the Romans did it too.
Yeah. Well, hey, I can actually ask you about a very interesting experience I had then, because in many years before I met you in 2010, I was walking home from my work in the middle of winter, and I just, like, it was 10 o'clock on a Friday night or 11 o'clock, and I was actually quite injured. I'd go into hospital the following Tuesday morning to emergency, but this was the Friday night before, and I was really reluctant and wanted to get home because I had this injury. And I crossed paths with this this guy in the dark, and me, I'm a white Westerner, Australian and stuff. This person was actually African, very dark, and so I mean, if I was stigmatized by like race and all that sort of stuff, I would have had an issue. But I walked past him and I was trying to avoid him, but he engaged me and he asked me like the road he was walking down was actually. He was asking me if he was going to this place called long story short, I can't remember the details, but he was going the wrong way and he was very drunk. And I was like, oh, man, I don't want to deal with this. But then I spoke to him and found out the reason for him being drunk was his brother. He was from Sierra Leone and he'd been one of the, the heroin addicted sort of shooters, like slaves. And the warriors, the blood diamond warriors. And he'd actually
the kid warriors.
Yeah. I mean, me, an Aussie, down a random alley and stuff like that. This guy was drunk, all right, because his brother had just been shot in Afghanistan for the US, and they were both refugees, and they got split up. And that day, his brother actually got shot, and he was drunk because he was just like beside himself with like loss. And he was staggering the wrong way, drunk, not knowing where he was in a foreign city, away from that and like family and stuff like that. And he ran into me, and I just said, "Look, mate, you're going the wrong way. I'll walk you home." And we talked, and he showed me in his forearms, he had bullet wounds because he got shot holding his AK-47 through both arms, stuff like that. Yeah. So you're talking about use of drugs and slaves and stuff. He was like on heroin, they you know what I mean, to create warriors and stuff like that. And it was like a massive thing. Like I was just like there at the right place, like I am for so many things. And I reckon this guy would have probably killed himself. And he was beside himself. He just had someone help him. You know what I mean? Like it was.
And you were there, and there you were,
Absolutely.
able to tell that story to the future.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting here is, how do I put this? Child soldiers are age-old, but the one you're referring to, so what they do is right around 7 years old, they get them hooked on heroin, like hardcore heroin. Like, I don't know if you don't know about heroin, you start detoxing, and, if you get a lot of it in 12 hours, you start to go through horrible pain. You feel like you're going to die if you don't get it, and they will do anything to get it. Now imagine being like 7, 8, or 9, getting hooked on that stuff, and the only way you're going to get your stuff is you pick up that gun and you start shooting the people they tell you to shoot. Yeah. Whether it was your mother, father, cat, or dog, it didn't matter.
Yeah, it's just like ridiculous.
And to escape that and to detox from that.
Yeah, to survive it.
That's age old. That's age old. That's thousands of years of practice in our world.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what you're saying about drugs are used and stuff, like the assassins with hashish. Yeah.
Now, the other thing is in Europe, you have these chemical concoctions that they put together, because alchemy was the big tool warfare there, until more plentiful reproductive ways were discovered of getting your slaves to do what you wanted them to do. Huh? In Roman times, when they were invading Germany, I think the first time with first Caesar or Gaius Marius, you can go back to the Republican time. In one battle, they could have gotten 250,000 slaves. Huh?
Wow.
Imagine that. Imagine that as an industry all throughout the Roman Empire, where you could say the population of the Roman Empire was, in this era, 15 million citizens, or 18 million citizens, or 30 million citizens at the peak, and 40 million slaves. What does that tell you?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Slavery in the United States didn't end until 1864. But then again, it didn't really end.
No.
That's what they want you to believe, but it didn't really end. Slavery still goes on in the world today.
Yeah.
How do we get past it? Big question, isn't it?
Well, to me, you actually had a pretty cool guy that was at your event ring you up just after it, and he wanted to be an activist because
Yes.
he was from
Abreu, yeah.
Eritrea, I think, or Ethiopia. I think it's Ethiopia. Sorry, mate, if I got it wrong.
Sudan.
Yeah, but he was quite, it was a serious situation around him, and he wanted to really get entrenched and involved. And you said, be a healer, go and do a healing, like learn healing and become a healer. Don't get engaged in that, because being an activist is a trap on certain respects,
That's right.
And to me, like, what's the resolution for it? And this is where I've sort of, like you've said, like abuse and pedophile rings and stuff like that, and some of the stuff done by the hierarchical orders around the world is and as an individual sort of example is horrific, but it's a consistent theme. And to me, the way I handle it is exactly what we said before. It's like master myself. If I've got an issue with it, I'm contributing to it because my emotions are very powerful. And I just, like you said, you do it from the sacred neutral perspective, and you see it as an apparatus of that structure. And for me to negate it, I get better in me. So I use it as a instrument to justify, or not justify, but incentivize for me to get better at me, being me. Like say
Go ahead.
No, you go. I think you've got
Self-incentivizing is a learned skill, and some people have a really hard time with it because instant gratification is so easy. What, I gotta wait to give myself something? I've got to earn it from myself? No, I can give it to myself right now.
Yeah.
Dollar-based economy, coin-based economy. Valuing your earnings at an hourly or a contractual wage.
Yeah.
Taking the truth and meaning of it away.
Yeah. Like, to me, the potential is, like, if a few people out there actually see the issues in the world, and instead of going in like a moth to a flame sort of thing, moth to a light and getting zapped, you step back. Yep. And if you realize your emotional state is being triggered by this, something external to you, and you're not a self-master for it, what's the path to mastering it and not being affected by it? So, and if people actually, to me, the unexplored path and potential is that if people actually use what goes on as a instrument to identify that they're not a master of themselves, and then choose to explore self-mastery, to me that's the path to negation, mate. Because what will happen over time is,
Let's take that a little further. The path to negation is understanding that you have the power to negate.
Yes.
That's the first part of awareness. The second part of awareness is when you go to use that skill and you've actually changed something, negated something in your life, will your awareness slide back down to negation of your negation? Or will you engage the discipline to make sure that whatever part of the repetitive side of you wants to repeat it?
Yeah.
Because it knew nothing more.
Yes.
Sometimes we take our awareness and we negate something that's super powerful undercurrents in our life, such as depression, regression, shame, blame, and guilt. That's why the contract revocations are so effective for some people, and other people ineffective because they can't put the power behind it.
Yeah.
Or they won't confront the repetitive process that brings it back.
Yeah.
And that's with any religious or esoteric practice system. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you're going to change, you're going to change based off of the rules of yourself.
Yeah. Because, like, maybe if I dare associate what I said, it's like a big influence on that is the news and the media. And not everything is actually true. It's just there to actually get you off balance on an emotional level, to actually go down a path which makes you potentially vulnerable for other things. So, or negate your energy when you could have done something, had a brilliant idea or something, you know.
I got a little bit of a truth here to state to everyone. What I do is so ungodly easy that once you experience it on your own, you'll be like, wow, that's easy. Okay? I maintain about 20 hours a month to do it at the level that I'm doing. I mean, the serious levels, where I could repeat it instantly, so on and so forth. But when you first get into it and you hobby into it, but you know your truth, you realize how easy it is to do.
Yeah.
Really easy.
Yeah.
Really easy. I'm engaging all of my own belief systems into myself.
Yeah.
I've got a 5-year archive.
Yeah, and that's where I've been going through to actually offer it in a different way, so people actually either find it,
Right, you hear the consistent message over and over again. I used to look at the chat rooms and the Facebooks and stuff, and one of these things I would see is, like, in the beginning was, the people that were trying to figure out if I was lying, telling the truth, or full of bullshit, or this or that. I would see this common theme is, no matter what it is, I don't think it's possible for anyone to stay that long and not miss one lie, or it doesn't matter. This is beyond being able to make it up. Everything connects.
Yeah. To me, the way I see it, mate, and maybe this is the way other people don't see it, is like, all you've done to me is offer how amazing existence is. And I'm craving to want to know how much more amazing it is. So I get nourished by exploring it.
And I show it through the patterns.
Yeah.
The subtle patterns that are in each of the messages. Now, you've listened to a significant portion, and you've discovered the common and uncommon and meta messages that are there, and other forms and other nuggets that come because I'm encoding all the light of my knowledge in each word.
Absolutely.
Not just the subject matter of what's being spoken about.
Yeah, like, to me, you're the MJ of truth, mate. Knocking down trees, like, for eternity. You know what I mean?
Power is the full concept of responsibility. With power comes responsibility. With responsibility comes understanding. With understanding comes a returning to the state of being, of a neutral state. With power comes intent. With power comes energy. With power comes all the terms that we must use to advance in life without polarity. Power is the place that you live on. Power is prayer. Power is the everything and nothing to achieve unity and wholeness among us all. Power will be redefined on many new levels, and power will be let go. As powers begin to redefine for each person, will once again return to that of the message of the crow. How do we love ourselves enough to return to wholeness, to step out of the old genetic wisdom and cultural wisdom so that power can be accepted and shared with the all? As power is created and co-created, we return to joy. And with power there is joy, and joy in itself is its own power. Happiness is its own power. Wisdom is its own power. But when we use wisdom and happiness to create grace, we go on to a whole new level of power, where the power of grace takes us high above the clouds and allows us to see the great star nation and beyond. Power is grace, and accepting that the innocent inner child is a power of its own. Power defines itself on many levels, from the dream time to the self-deception nature that we have. Power of the self is to gather the wisdom, the energy, to divert yourself from ignorance and intolerance, and to co-create the new levels of loyalty and stamina and action. As action turns knowledge into wisdom and wisdom becomes power, we create patterns. And as we create new patterns, we begin to understand the whole. Once we begin to take power in our hands, we must tell of power's nature. And as we speak of power's nature, we give away power at all times to be the teacher. For it is the teacher's essence to give away all power, so the students become the teachers.